let's do a full face of Rare Beauty products and I will tell you my brutally honest thoughts on each product. This is part of a new series that I'm doing exclusively for my YouTube, where if I've got enough products, I will do a full face of a whole brand and tell you my honest thoughts about the brand. So I'm starting off with Rare Beauty because I have like nearly every single product in their range. I will also be doing a wear test on all of these full faces too. So these are going to be in depth. I've tried most of them. Some of them I haven't tried before as well, starting with the Always an Optimist 4-in-1 Mist. So apparently this hydrates, primes and sets. Okay, so firstly, let's see what the mister is like. I'm going to use this as a primer. Oh, I don't like that smell. It smells kind of like herbal, but I really like the mister. It's very fine. It does feel refreshing on the face. I will also use it to set my makeup as well and see how it does. So next is the Positive Light Tinted Moisturizer. I have this in the shade 14W, and again, I would recommend shaking this first. So generally, I like to apply this on the back of my hand. I'm also going to be using this Rare Beauty foundation brush, which I haven't used in a long time. For some reason, I just don't tend to reach for it. It's quite a dense brush, and I do generally prefer slightly fluffier and bigger brushes. But with this Rare Beauty foundation, as you can see, it works really, really well. I love this tinted moisturizer. It's also got SPF, so it's one of my favorites in the summer. It's a true skin tint. It's not gonna try and be anything else or give too much coverage, but it's also not like the glowiest skin tint ever. So if you prefer slightly more skin-like finish, this will be the one for you. So this is how the skin tint is looking. As you can see, it looks so smooth and it looks exactly like my skin. I also really like the finish with this brush actually, so I'm going to come back to this brush a little bit more, I think, in future. Next we have the Undereye Brightener. This went viral ages ago and I feel like the internet has sort of forgotten about it. I've got this in the shade Light. Now I reviewed this at the time and everyone was absolutely loving it, and I just didn't really see the hype. I like the fact that it's got a metal applicator, but this offers basically zero coverage for me. And I know that the point is for it to be a sort of under eye brightener. This didn't really brighten for me, or I also have the problem of having quite hollow under eyes rather than dark under eyes, so brighteners in general just aren't really for me. I need something that has more coverage, and or I also prefer when concealers are like maybe even a little bit too dark for me. They just tend to not emphasize the hollowness as much. This also is really, really glowy, which I don't necessarily think looks particularly natural under the eyes. Forgot to mention I was also using this concealer brush, which I do like, but I tend to prefer it for the thinner formulas because again, it is quite dense. This is how the under eye brightener is looking up close. I do think that it leaves a really smooth finish and it is good for dry skin. I actually have two different sort of bronzer contour products from Rare Beauty. So firstly is the new Soft Pinch Liquid Contour. This is basically a bronzer version of their blush. So I'm going to use one on one side and I'll use the bronzing stick on the other side. I absolutely love this product. It is quite pigmented, so if you're pale like me, I'd be relatively careful with how much you apply. But as you will see, this blends out so beautifully, and even if you use a little bit too much, like I have just then probably, it's very easy to diffuse it because it blends out so nicely. I also think that this shade works really, really well on my skin tone as a bronzer. I have a sort of warm slash neutral, maybe even olive leaning undertone, obviously quite pale. The only thing that I really think they went wrong with here is the marketing of this product. They shouldn't have called it a contour unless they were going to provide true contour shades, because even on me as someone who has a relatively warm undertone, you can see how warmly that has blended out on my skin tone. So basically I like everything about this product except the name. I just think it should have been called a bronzer slash contour. I will also say that I recently on my TikTok did a comparison between this and the e.l.f. liquid contour, and they are very, very similar, to be honest. So next is the bronzer stick, and I will apply this on this side. I actually have not used this in a while because I do remember really, really liking it, but I did a comparison between this and the Merit Beauty bronzing stick and I just much preferred the Merit Beauty one. It's very, very natural and very sort of radiant looking, but this does blend out nicely. I just feel like it's not as satisfying as I want it to be. If I'm picking between the stick and the liquid version, I would definitely pick the liquid version for Rare Beauty. Not that the stick is bad at all, and obviously if you want a slightly more controlled application, then the stick works really well. As you can see, I do think that looks a little bit more natural. I just don't think it's sort of blended as far as the liquid one has. I do actually think that this would work much better as a contour and this would work much better as a bronzer, just because, as I said, you get a much more controlled application with a stick product. So if they released contour shades of this, I'd be very interested. I forgot to say the shades I used. So for the liquid one, I used Gentle, and for the cream one, I used Bright Side. Okay, now for what some might argue is the star of the show, the Soft Pinch Liquid Blushes. This is probably Rare Beauty's most viral product, and it is viral for being super pigmented, which isn't ideal for my pale skin situation. So this is the shade Virtue, and I didn't realize until recently that they actually did glowy and matte versions of these. So I have both. The other one is very pink, so I won't try the matte one. This is the radiant one, and I really, really love the finish of this, but the matte one, it just looked a little bit patchy for me. So the liquid one, absolutely, I do recommend this as a product. As you can see how beautifully that blends, and if you use the right amount, it really works for any skin tone. And I love how inclusive Rare Beauty are, that they have something that's pigmented enough for multiple skin tones to use. I will say, out out of all of my liquid blushes, this just isn't going to be the one I reach for because I don't want to have to think about how much I'm applying. I definitely prefer the sheerer formulas, which for pale skin are much easier to control. I'd rather build something up than accidentally apply too much, which is fine. Not every product has to be made for my skin tone. And I do think that this is a very, very good liquid blush. It blends out exactly how you want a liquid blush to. But as I said, the matte version, I wasn't so keen on. I just want to take a second here also to talk about the Rare Beauty blush brush. This is my #1 blush brush of all time. I've never tried another brush like it. I've tried so many blush brushes and contour brushes and whatever. This brush has this sort of like tapered quality to it. I cannot explain it. Any formula of blush that you want, liquid, cream, powders, whatever, this will give you the most diffused look. Quite often I have tried a blush with this brush and thought I really liked it, and then I've tried it with another brush and not liked it as much. Could not recommend this brush enough. So obviously I can't do a Rare Beauty video without talking about the powder blush. These are the sort of blush versions of their highlighters that they released. I actually did used to have the highlighter in the lightest shade and it smashed into a million pieces, which I've heard has happened to a lot of people. So these formulas are definitely not long lasting in terms of being able to keep them safe in your drawers. So I liked the highlighter. I thought it worked really well. The blush, however, and by the way, I have this in the shade Joy, just did not give what I wanted it to give. Firstly, ooh, it's a little bit too pigmented for me. That's my bad though. I did apply a little bit too much. But even there, I've applied a lot, and can you see the radiance in that? I just can't see it in the way that people portrayed it to be online. I think this was a very classic example of a lot of beauty creators using ring lights. I never use ring lights. I always use natural lighting, as I'm in right now. Ring lights just make everything look more glowy than it is. So I just think a lot of the marketing of this blush was very deceiving. I'm going to try and apply a little bit less on this side. Even then, it's just a bit pigmented for me. Yeah, for pale skin, I just can't recommend this blush. As you can see, it just is really hard to control how much you apply. I really tried to sort of pat off all the excess as I could. It is looking a little bit more radiant now that I look at it on this side, but I don't know, up close it's just absolutely not giving what I want it to. I will say I used to have the Rare Beauty setting powder and I'm so frustrated with myself because I must have given it away. So I'll give it a very brief review, although I obviously cannot show you in person. I don't even know why I gave it away because it definitely wasn't the worst powder I've ever tried. It just wasn't my favorite one. It's a loose setting powder and it's supposed to give a sort of slightly radiant finish. As far as I remember, I liked the finish of it, but it just wasn't the best for my dry skin. I cannot handle any powders that make my skin feel tight. I've had it with a number of powders. There's only certain setting powders that work for my super, super dry skin. The Rare Beauty wasn't one of them. Regardless, I can't really confirm or deny my claims because it was such a long time ago I tried it, so I do apologize. But I will set this again with the Always an Optimist spray. Okay, not that my skin was looking dull before. I think all of these products together worked really nicely overall on my face, but that mist has really added some life back into my skin as well. I really like this setting spray so far. Obviously it depends how long it's going to make my makeup last, but as a primer and a setting mist in the first instance, I really like it. Moving on to brows, I have two brow products. Firstly is this Shape and Fill Duo from Rare Beauty. This is very underrated in my opinion. I don't see anyone talking about this. So it's a little sort of powder brow duo. One of these sides is actually quite creamy. I don't know if you can tell there. And then the other one is a bit more powdery and they're sort of slightly different shades to each other. And this is the best part. It comes with a little brush that's tucked away into the packaging. I absolutely adore innovations like this where you have tools included in the packaging. I actually have not used this brow powder in a long time. And as far as I remember, I only ever really used the cream side. There is a little mirror in this as well, which is exactly the right shape to do your brows if you're out and about. But I will use my normal mirror just so that you can see how this applies. I really like this product. I think it gives a very diffused brow look. It's not really for super defined brows, but for those natural brow days where you just want a little bit of filling and shaping, this works really well, especially for my sparse brows. As you can see there, that has just filled out my brow in a very natural way. I'm not going to use the powder side. I remember it being a little bit too pigmented for me, but I like how there's an option. The next product I have is the Flexible Lifting Brow Gel. This is a clear brow gel. I've seen a lot of love for this online. It's taken me a long time to try it, and I tried it the other day and I absolutely love this. For me, it's very reminiscent of my absolute #1 favorite brow gel, which is the Benefit 24-Hour Brow Setter, except I will say I think I might prefer this one now. Hopefully you can see the way it just sort of sticks your brow hairs down immediately while keeping them completely flexible. It doesn't dry them down to be like super crusty or anything, and I just think it makes them look super fluffy without it being that sort of soap brow look, which I can't stand. It doesn't stick them like to your face. It just moves the hairs in a very sort of fluffy and natural direction. I don't have any eyeshadow. I do really want to try that eyeshadow palette that they have, but it is quite expensive. So I'm just going to move straight on to eyeliner. So this is the Perfect Strokes eyeliner. As you can see, I have two that are very well loved. I've literally used this to this death. I've just opened this new one, which I've been using for a week, and I will say I love this eyeliner, right? It's probably one of my favorite eyeliners of all time. time, especially for hooded eyes, as you'll see in a minute. But I do want to quickly say that something I noticed as I got to the end of this was that it does tend to sort of like bubble up a little bit sometimes. So there must be some sort of thing that happens with the mechanism where it releases a bit too much product. And I thought, okay, well, you know, I've had this for months. It's probably normal. It's happened to my new one within a week. So I do still use it because it is just the perfect balance between like inky and not too inky. Like it lays down color straight away, like you can see, and it applies so smoothly and perfectly without imprinting or anything like you see over the crease of my eye there. It's just the perfect eyeliner for that. But if you do have it, just be careful right before you use it to like tap out a little bit of excess on your hand or something, because if it does that thing where it inks up a bit too much, it will imprint on your top eyelid, unfortunately. Other than that, this is the perfect eyeliner. I really wish that didn't happen to it, because I'm doing this super far away in my mirror. I can hardly see what I'm doing, and already this is how it looks. So I'm just going to finish this off camera. And there you have it. When it's at its peak, this is my #1 favorite eyeliner. As you'll see when I come back from the wear test, this genuinely lasts all day. I've never tried an eyeliner that's been able to replace it, but let me know if you have other recommendations that don't do that inky up thing. Also, if you wanted a hooded eyeliner tutorial, I have quite a few on my TikTok in the hooded eyes playlist. But if you don't have TikTok and you want me to make a dedicated one for YouTube, let me know. Only 3 products left. So next is this mascara, which as you can see, I have not tried before. So this will be the first review and wear test that I will be doing for this mascara. So this is the Perfect Strokes Universal Volumizing Mascara, and I do believe that this is a tubing mascara. If you have followed me anywhere else before, you'll know that only tubing mascaras don't smudge on me. Right off the bat, I'm not loving the brush of this. It's one of those sort of fiber brushes. I generally tend to prefer the plastic ones. This one, I feel like I'm having to like press quite hard on my lashes to get that volume. Let's try a second layer on this eye. Okay, yeah, I'm not loving it. It's not giving the best volume. It could work, obviously, if you prefer your lashes to look much more natural and a little bit wispy or something. That said, if it's a tubing mascara, I'm gonna love it nonetheless. So I will just see what the wear is like. And the last 2 products I have are lip products. So we'll start off with the Kind Words Matte Lip Liner. I think I have this in the shade Creative. I, once again, haven't used this lip liner in a long time. I'm not really sure why. I was gonna say, I feel like the shade was like a little bit too warm for me, and this, I believe, is the lightest shade. This will probably look nice with the blush combo that I've got going on. It applies beautifully though. It's a very lovely formula. It's like creamy enough that it applies really easily onto the lips, but hard enough that I can tell that it's a very long-lasting formula. And that's it applied to both sides of my lips. I do actually think it looks really nice. Also, by the way, typical Rare Beauty style, they have a little sharpener at the end as well. The last product I have is the Tinted Lip Oil. I did actually used to have the lipstick as well. I think it's a matte lipstick. I hated the lipstick. It was so drying on my dry lips. But this lip oil, on the other hand, this is in the shade Joy. This is gorgeous. I don't know if this really is going to suit the lip liner that I have on, but when you first apply it, it's so smooth and nice feeling on the lips. It feels really hydrating and moisturizing. And I also think that it applies in a really solid color, although it's not too pigmented. So it doesn't look patchy or anything. And actually, this is one of the only lip oils I've tried that truly feels like an oil. But this is also a lip tint as well. So again, we'll see by the end of the day how long it lasts, but I don't really mind because it's really easy to apply on top of itself throughout the day as well. So there you have my full face of Rare Beauty. I think overall my skin looks really nice. I really like the brand overall, and even the products I don't like, you can sort of make them work overall. So I will be back at the end of the day to give you an update on how this is all wearing. I'm actually going to a gig today, so it's a very good test. I will see you there. Okay, so it's been about 7 hours since applying the Rare Beauty products, but bear in mind, I have been to a gig and it was boiling in that room. And overall, I actually cannot believe how well this makeup has stayed on. Obviously, I am looking very shiny, but considering that I didn't set this with any powder, it has held up really well, even by itself. So I'm thinking especially the foundation, like even around my chin and above my lip where I was getting really sweaty, it doesn't look cakey, or you know how makeup can sometimes get around those areas. I wonder if that's also partially to do with the setting spray. Obviously, I'll have to do like a separate test for that. And then you can see why I love this eyebrow gel so much, because look, they look exactly the same. Same with the eyeliner. Like you can see it's faded a tiny bit, which does happen to me with every eyeliner. If you've got a crease, you'll understand. But it doesn't smudge above or below, so it's not leaving you with any sort of panda eyes. And speaking of panda eyes, this mascara has held up pretty well. And actually mascaras, even tubing mascaras, if you don't set your under eyes, they can still smudge a little bit. And I don't believe that this has smudged at all. If it has, then like very minimally. So despite the fact I don't love the mascara as a mascara, I do really like the way that it's lasted. The blush looks the same. It's sort of hard to tell if the contour is still there. Like, I can only assume it is, but I don't know, this lighting, I can't really tell. I'd say the lip stain has mostly faded, but the lip liner is definitely still holding a shape there. So yeah, my overall thoughts on Rare Beauty, incredibly positive. Obviously, not every single product works for me, and that is kind of normal, but in general, I really like the brand. I love their packaging. I love their ethos, and I feel like it's one of the few celebrity brands where the celebrity who owns the brand, e.g. Selena Gomez, has actually put a lot of thought into all of the products herself, which I really appreciate. So even if they don't work for me, hopefully they work for somebody. So let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my takes on any of these products. What is your favorite Rare Beauty product? And thank you for watching.